Most of us have been conditioned not to take a risk. People ask me all the time, what does it take to be happy? And I always tell them it's really simple. One word, progress. Progress equals happiness. If you keep growing, you're going to feel alive. And if you keep growing, you're going to have more to give. And when you're growing and giving is when life is magnificent. It doesn't matter how many statues, Oscars they give you, or Emmys, or how much money you have in the bank. We've all seen people have all those things, and I get the phone call because they're depressed or somebody commits suicide in that area. So it's really an inner game. And I think that's what's missing for us today. Everybody's focusing on the outside world, and how there's a lot of things in the outside world you'll never be able to control. You can influence, but you can't control it. This, your mind, your emotions, your body, you have 100% control over what you do with these things. And that's where the game is won. You win the inner game, then you win the outer game. But a lot of people spent their life trying to win the outer game. They won and they're miserable. So to me, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And so many people are focused on success still, which to me is like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like success is getting what you want. Fulfillment is living what you're made for, you know? And it's like fulfillment and success, they're not even the same universe. And there's nothing wrong with going for success, but you really got to figure out what you're made for. And nobody knows in the beginning. So you start where you are and you do what's in front of you, you do what's next. And you keep growing until you start to discover, hey, this is my real passion. This is my real hunger and drive. And it can change. People go for 5, 6, 7 years, and then they usually question their business, their career, their body, their relationships. And then one of two things happens. They change direction and feel renewed, or they go, no, I got a great deal here. What the hell's wrong with me? And they recommit and they get stronger. But that's life. And if you don't grow, I don't give a damn how much you got going for you, you're going to be miserable.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Tony Robbins, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, make an impact.
It's always been impact for me. I love people. Somebody asked my mom, was he always like this? She's passed away, but she used to tell the story, so I'd hear her version of the story. And, you know, we grew up in kind of the hood of LA, a really rough territory, and on a commercial street in this crappy little house. There was a lot of violence around there. But right next door was this old liquor store, and we were poor, and she was pregnant with my brother. I was almost 4.5, I guess, years old, 5 years old. And, you know, I would go to that place to get stuff because we had nobody else. My father was an underground parking attendant, so he wasn't there. So it was she and I. And so I guess she sent me next door to get bread and milk, which we desperately needed. We had very little money. I guess I was gone for a very long time where she was worried, and I'd come back with no bread and milk. And she said, where's the bread and milk? And I said, well, there's a poor boy there. So I gave him our money. And she says, we're poor, you know? So I've always had that. And I think there's an old movie called Mr. Holland's Opus. I use it sometimes to Date with Destiny. And there's a line in the movie with this man. His whole life was about, you know, writing this great opus and how he'd make him rich and famous and all these things. And he becomes a school teacher, not because he likes kids, but because he gets off at 3 p.m. and has the summers off, thinks he's going to write this opus. And I could cry thinking about it right now because it's just what life's about. You know, life's about love and life's about people. But there's this moment when he loses his job because they cut the music program and he decides he's going to retire. And he's leaving with his wife and his kid who's deaf. He's ironically positioned. You know the movie.
I am very familiar.
I get teary-eyed thinking about it right now. Every time I watch it, you know, you see this man come and he's at the latter years of his life. And all of a sudden, as he's leaving, there's this sound in the gym. And he goes, what is that sound? He goes, no. And it's after hours. He goes to open up the gym. And there's all these students from all the years of his 25 years of teaching or 30 years of teaching, whatever it was. And they're all cheering. And he comes down and he's just stunned by the response. And his wife gets up and says, you know, a lot of people heard about the retirement of my husband, and I can't believe the outreach. And so we wanted to let him know how much he's loved. And then all of a sudden the doors open and this little redhead girl who he had blasted in the beginning because she had no talent in the clarinet. Yeah. But he then fell in love with trying to support her. And it's when he became a better man. She's now an adult and she's the governor of the state. And she goes bursting in and goes, oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were a little bit running late. And she comes up and she looks at him and gets on stage and she does this little speech. But the essence of it is, Mr. Holland's touched all of us so much. She says, you know, Mr. Holland had this opus he was going to write. And word was it was going to make him rich and famous. But he's neither, at least not outside this small town. But she said, but if he just got those riches and fame, he would have missed out on what he has here. And she says, look around you, Mr. Holland. These are the notes of your music. This is the symphony of your life. And sorry, I get emotionally. I'm so silly. I'm an emotional guy. That's why I do what I do, because I get to see people's lives change. I get to see moms reclaim themselves. I see children, stand up for themselves. I see men who become men again and really step up and take the responsibilities that make them feel alive. I see people build businesses, and I see people happy again. I see couples coming together. I see joy and happiness, not because life is always like that, but because they can find meaning even when it's painful. And to me, to live a life with that kind of meaning is a gift from God.
Rule number 3, recognize patterns.
If you look at a person's life, most people major in minor things. Jim Rohn, my teacher, used to say that to me all the time, meaning they know about all kinds of things that don't matter. But there's maybe a half dozen things that matter most. There's your body, there's your emotions, there's your relationships, there's your finances, there's your career or your sense of mission or your business. And then there's the spiritual side of life. And so I've always taught on all those areas. But in 2008, when all hell broke loose the first time, I've worked with Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 financial traders for now 26 years. And so I knew a little bit in this area. Most people don't know. I know the details of.
You know a lot, man. Hearing you talk about finance, you are freakishly knowledgeable. I've seen you on stage with people that make a living doing it. And not only do you keep up, in many ways, I think they're listening to you as closely as you're listening to them at this point. How do you learn that stuff that deeply?
Well, I go for total immersion. It's like if you learn language a little bit at a time, 2-3 years from now, you don't speak the language. But if I dumped you into Rome and said, you're not leaving for 8 weeks and there's no teacher, you're going to be speaking Italian before you leave there. So I'm a big believer in total immersion, but I also believe in modeling the best on earth. So in Money Master the Game, fortunately, I have access. So it's like, I'm going to interview 50 of the smartest financial people on earth and everybody who's made it from nothing to multi-billionaire. And they all did it different ways. And I'm good at pattern recognition and I'm good at pattern utilization. In fact, I would say to your audience, in 2040, which sounds like a long way from now, 18 years ago like that, your mind will be blown. Half the jobs we have today, according to Oxford and a variety of other universities, are going to be gone. They're replaced by robotics, by algorithms. You know the game. And so the bottom line is you need to be good at pattern recognition, and that's what gets somebody strong at anything. I mean, you look at, why is Amazon doing so well? He realized one pattern was valued over anything else, convenience. Right? If you look at Tom Brady, a friend of mine, he's got pattern recognition like nobody else at 43 years old. He's able to do things no one dreamed could be done. He's got more Super Bowl rings than any team. So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see. What's the pattern? Then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it. It's another thing to use it. And then if you're good after a while, you get to pattern creation. It's like if you learn to play the piano, most people play other people's music. And then there's a point you've learned so much that you're able to create. And I think those 3 skills are the most important skills. So I look at the areas that matter most and say, who already has that extraordinary pattern recognition utilization? So I go to Ray Dalio, who's, returned more money to investors than anyone alive. He's going to have a different level of understanding than the average person. And because I immerse myself so much, most of these interviews are supposed to be 30 minutes. And the average one was 3.5 hours. And so, but like Ray Dalio is now a dear friend of mine. I can pitch and catch with him because I came so over-prepared and because I could, again, not just catch the ball he threw, but pitch it back. And so to me, that's what I did. I did for total immersion. It was a 3.5-year project and then expanded. I wrote, Unshakable after that because I saw what was going to happen in the markets and I wanted people prepared.
Rule number 4, learn from smart people.
I looked for who are the people producing the greatest results, not who can talk a good game, who's producing the result. A lot of people can talk about it. It's interesting. I'm a results guy. And I believe in modeling. My original teacher was a man named Jim Rohn, you probably heard of, and he used to always say, success leaves clues. If you want something, make it a study, immerse yourself. So when I wrote Money Master the Game, I said, okay, I've been coaching Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 traders for 25 years. I know more than most people ever know in a lifetime, but I want to know it all. So I'm going to interview 50 of the smartest financial people on earth. Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn, right? Warren Buffett. I want to interview people that started with nothing and became multi-billionaires. And they're all different, But my whole belief is you look for, there's like 3 skill sets that we all should have if we're great. And you're really good at these, Jim. I'm not throwing smoke your way. It's just the truth. What's made you great, what makes me great, what made everything take off for any type of business or life is understanding pattern recognition. If you understand pattern recognition, you know what to do with finance. If you understand pattern recognition, you know what to do in business. If you're great at pattern recognition with music, you can do an amazing job. If you're good at pattern recognition with dancing, you can move your body in ways most people never dream of. The people that become masters at pattern recognition, but then pattern utilization, they recognize the pattern, but then they use it. Those are the people that have extraordinary lives. And then there is 1/3 level, and that is pattern creation, where you literally start, you played other people's music so much, and now you know enough that now you're able to create your way of doing things. And I think those 3 skill sets are there. So my process is who's the best in the world on earth and how to get access to them. And at this stage of my life, that's not that difficult to do. But even with the money book, I knew some of them, but then I'd say, listen, I get 4 or 5 people I knew to refer me, and I'd say, give me 30 minutes. My average interview was 3.5 hours. I remember Jack Bogle, who's now passed away, who created Vanguard, saying, I invited Tony Robbins into my house for 30 minutes, and 3.5 hours later, I had the most probing interview of my entire career because, I'm pulling those tools out. And once they saw the level I was playing the game at, then they wanted to help. And that's, now Ray Dalio is a good friend of mine. So the people I have access to that I can pitch and catch with, because I immerse myself and because I learned from all the people around them, it gave me a greater base. So that's what I do with anything. But then I try to take that complexity, like finance, with all these people and all the different approaches. Some are macro traders, some are value traders, et cetera, and say, what are the common denominators? How do I simplify that so we can actually use it? So you can follow through. And that's my process.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, share your knowledge.
I just hate to see people limited. I hate to see people suffering. I've suffered enough myself. I don't want anybody else to suffer. And I'm lit up by being able to see people really take control of their life. And we can't control everything, obviously. There are things beyond our control. But there's so much within our control that people give up because they're afraid or they don't want to fail or they're just pissed off or frustrated, overwhelmed, or stressed. And so what I've managed to do is to take fundamental principles that can change the way you think and the way you feel and the way you behave, your finances, your body, your emotions, your relationships. I've been obsessed for principles that can make that happen. But I'm pretty good at creating an environment where I create a community very quickly where 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people in a room for 3 or 4 days with me. And, people who wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie because someone spent $300 million on it and you've been there. I'll have 15, 20,000 people there for 50 hours in a weekend. Yeah. And nobody leaves. They can vote with their feet and they get their money back anytime they want. They don't. It's a stadium full of people who become aligned. And there are different religions, different backgrounds, different belief systems, different sexual preferences, different political views. And yet we come together for a higher good. And to me, that's the most extraordinary experience. But there's an energy to it also because ideas, when people say knowledge is power, it's a lie. Knowledge is not power. It's potential power. Mm-hmm. Execution trumps knowledge every day of the week. And my job is to get people to execute. And when you get people to execute, they get momentum. And when they get momentum, it's self-fulfilling, right? Okay, I know who I am now. I know what I'm capable of. And you tend to go to higher and higher levels of contribution, of impact, and success.
Rule number 6, manage your mind.
I start with the mind and emotions. And to me, that's not, I don't tell people to believe spiritually or religiously, but I believe prayer is a very useful thing. Reminding yourself you're not the center of the universe and asking for guidance and help and other things to do that. I personally believe that, but not everybody does. And I don't tell people they have to, but it starts there. But there's also, when you have a spiritual side of your life, there's a lot less anxiety because you believe there's something greater than yourself.
Right.
And then you do your part.
Yeah.
Like you said, I use a similar metaphor when I say it's, trusting God and tie up your camels, that type of thing, right? But what most people don't know is the power of their mind. So there's an entire last 2 chapters of the book. If no one reads anything else, I'd say, please read those 2 chapters. Because if you do everything physically well, if you don't manage your mind and emotions, you'll get sick.
Rule number 7, make things simple.
It really comes down to anyone can learn anything if it's important enough to you. What makes it important to me is not just my own life. It's like if I have a problem, my shoulder, my neck, whatever, and I can solve it, I know that there are millions of other people who can be helped by it. So it's like my drive is not just for me. That wouldn't be enough because it's easy to meet your own needs. It's not that difficult. But if you can find something that you care about more than yourself, your daughter, your son, your family, your business, your mission, your community, whatever it is, that's really the secret to energy and vitality and strength and really learning. And I think the other thing is complexity is the enemy of execution. One of the things I want to do with people during this challenge is take things that seem so complex and make them so simple so you do it. If you have a business and you got this huge, complex plan, you hired a giant consulting firm, they put it all together, it never gets implemented. You know it, you've been in your companies. Why? Because they make it so complex and it's somebody else's plan. What I really want to do for people at this challenge is get it really simple, things you can do right now to change your life. You can go to experience it that day, and then you get momentum. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and all of a sudden now what used to be hard to do is easy to do. And I think for anyone, you got to understand anyone can learn anything if you can just break it down to its simple core. And that's what I try to do most.
Rule number 8, have a mission.
It's one of the things I'm behind it. I've got a dozen really important things to me. Feeding people is most important to me. Yeah. Providing fresh water. I do that in India for 250,000 people a day personally. I'm going to get that to 1 million people in the next few years. Wow. It's just about infrastructure. Freeing, boys and girls, women are about 80% of them. I mean, there's a new child abducted every 30 seconds. There's 6 million people in slavery around the world, children in slavery, sexual slavery. We've saved about 3,800 just in the last couple of years. I've gone on the operations myself undercover, but I work with Underground Railroad because they're former SEAL Team 6, CIA, FBI, and we teach the local government what to do to capture these people. So it's not just save some kids right now, but showing them what to do for the future. But I'm also, I'm involved with so many different things. And my answer is, if I think it's core to humanity, then I'm interested. Food is, air is, I've planted 10 million trees in the last year and a half. I'm more fortunate to have my own private jet, but I'm conscious of that. So it's like, how many trees does my whole lifestyle take? It's about 3,000 trees. So I said, I don't want to plant, 10 million. I said, screw it, I'll plant 100 million. So I planted 10 million already. I'm on course to the 100 million, just like feeding 1 billion people. So it's the things that matter. That's what God's doing. But I do things spontaneously. I was in San Francisco and I read in the newspaper that while I'm there, I was there to see Mark Benioff. And I see that the toughest part of San Francisco is called the Tenderloin District. And there's these nuns there that feed the poorest of the poor. And they're being evicted. And, it's one of the richest cities in the world. More billionaires there, tech billionaires than anyone. No one's doing anything. So I went over, knocked on the door, introduced myself, found out who the person was that was evicting him, called him up and said, look, I'm an owner too. You have the right to evict anybody. But do you really want to be the hated man in San Francisco? I said, why don't you let him stay 9 months? I'll get him out within 9 months. I'll pay you the additional rent. And I did. And then, the nuns are like, they're looking for a place to lease. And all of a sudden I get a call from the realtor because they're looking for a place to buy. And I called the nuns and said, you have some money I don't know about? God will provide, as they stare at me. So I bought him a place there, and my friend Mark Benioff then bought them a home to live in. So, I do things spontaneously. I love those things as well. But the secret to living is giving. I know it sounds corny, but I had a tough time in my life. I remember I was driving on the street in this 1968 Volkswagen. I was working so hard and I was so frustrated. Things weren't going the way I thought they should. And I was like, what's wrong? And then I pulled over to the side and I still have it today, this written journal. I wrote, the secret to living is giving. I started to cry because I lost the giving mode. I've gotten into the business mode. And to me, like I said, business is a spiritual game. If you're focused on giving, if you're doing more for your client or customer than anybody else, you will dominate. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. And that's what I've been able to do with, my 50 plus companies.
Rule number 9, help others.
That's really the essence of it. I used to have all these fancy things, but it's like today I just want to help. If I can be helpful to somebody, it gives me tremendous joy. My hats say, be a blessing and you're blessed, right? That's what these little hats are. I don't have a non-religious symbol, like a lucky symbol, but it's amazing how lucky you get when you're working hard to be a blessing. And it's amazing what happens for people. So my life is already so blessed, and whatever happens when I'm gone is gone. But while I'm here, I want to live fully and I want to touch as many lives and help as many people as I can and keep growing myself.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is inspire people.
I don't believe I'm everybody's teacher or I've got it all handled, but I've spent 42 years looking for answers. So when I was growing up, they called me a motivator, they called me a guru, and I hated those terms because I'm not better than anybody else. And I thought, who's influenced my life? I'm an athlete, so coaches did. And I was actually a much better athlete than some of my coaches, but they still were invaluable to me because they saw what I couldn't see because I was in the forest. I was on the court, right? They were outside of it. And so that's why I started calling myself a coach, not a guru. And also because I want people to know there's nobody broken. You don't need to be fixed. You might have some behaviors that don't work. You might have some habits. You might have some thinking habits, emotional habits. And we're the only humans, the only creatures that should say on the planet that can think a thought and get ourselves angry. Think a thought and get worried. Think a thought and get excited. Think a thought and feel grateful. Think a thought and be pissed off. And most of us just don't know how to run the show. And so what I try to do, that documentary is a kind of a 2-hour summary of a 6-day seminar I do called Date with Destiny. But you get to see somebody who's suicidal. There are many people, like in a room of 2,000-3,000 people. There's always a dozen people who are suicidal. So there's a woman there that was in this cult down in Brazil.
Yeah.
Remember her?
Yeah.
I just saw her. I was just in Brazil, just in Rio, literally a week ago. And that was 5 years ago that film was made. Right. And she has written a book. She's gotten out of the cult. She's got other people out of the cult. She's become a healer. And I'm just really, really proud of her. So seeing the change last, because most people think if you're going to change that fast, first of all, they don't think it's possible, but it is. You get upset that fast. You get wired that fast. You get conditioned that fast. But to see 5 and 10 years later that people's lives are changed is important for people to see so they know that you really can produce change in a moment that is lasting. I interviewed all these Nobel Prize guys as well as all these self-made billionaires. And one of them was a man named Shlomo. He was really brilliant. He said, you know what? People don't invest because A, they say, I can't, I don't have the money. But we're all good at dieting tomorrow. I'm going to go on a diet tomorrow. We all believe it. Or we're all good at saving tomorrow. We're not going to save today because we want to spend the money, but we'll save in the future. So he said, I took that pattern and figured out a strategy. And he proved it worked in the Midwest of the United States with blue-collar workers who'd never saved a dime. He went to them and said, I know you say you have no money. I'd ideally like you to save at least 5%, but minimum promise me 3.5% because no one's going to miss 3.5%. You'll adjust to that easily. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this plan called Save More for Tomorrow. We're going to go to your employer and you're going to tell them that whenever you get a raise, whenever it is, next year, 2 years, 10 years, doesn't matter when, 5%, whatever, the first 5% of money goes straight into this account. Well, within 15 years, these blue-collar workers were saving an average of 15%, and the top 40% were saving 20. When you save 20, that's the example of the guy from, who goes and has got $70 million. He saved 20% over time. So anyone can do it. We live in a culture where most people are dabblers today because today, if you ask me, what does it take to be happy? I can give it you one word, progress. Progress equals happiness. When you're making progress in your body, even if you're not there yet, you feel good. Right. You achieve your goal and you just sit around, you're not happy. We got to grow. We got to make progress. It's easy to make progress in the beginning of something. In the beginning of a relationship, who doesn't have a good time, right? In the beginning of starting a business, if you love what you're doing, of course you're gonna have a great time. In the beginning, anything, it's easy. A job, it's fun in the beginning. It's novelty, it's new. Mastery is when you've worked, in the beginning, learning a sport. How fast do you learn tennis? Just like zooms up here. You didn't know anything. You thought love, was an emotion. You find out it's a score, You go like this, but then you hit this plateau. And most people hit that plateau, they go, wrong job, wrong relationship, wrong business, because it's not instantly fulfilling them. But the people that go, I'm going to fight through and go deep. I'm going to find a way to break through. I'm going to find a way to learn and know more about this any human alive so that I can help as many human beings as possible. And it won't be bullshit because I've lived it. There is a power in mastery. And how many people do you know are really committed to mastery today? Most people dabble in a million things, they master nothing, and they wonder why they're unfulfilled. Because they're running for the sugar, the next thing that feels good, instead of getting past what doesn't feel good and getting to where you own something. You need to be clear what it is you really want. I always tell people, know not only what you want, but why you want it. I know this is simplistic, but most people just don't do the blocking and tackling of their life. The one we were talking to earlier, a great lady, and you could just see she wants to have a new business, but she never sat down to even put a plan together and says, why aren't I taking action? Well, when you're not sure what you're gonna do, you're gonna hesitate. And hesitation kills momentum. And momentum is what makes a sports team win. It's what makes an athlete, a business person win. When you get momentum, it's like takes enormous energy to get a rocket out of our gravitational pull of the Earth. But out of the solar system's easy. Once it has momentum, it takes less fuel, less energy. Starting a relationship, starting a business, changing your body. It takes so much in the beginning, but once you get going, it's actually really easy.
What's your definition of greatness?
I don't know. I think everyone has greatness. I don't like that separation. I respect it because in sports, I think it's really easy to measure. But sports is one aspect of life. You know, I think everyone has the opportunity to be great. To me, being great is being outstanding, to stand out from all the rest. And as you know, in sports, it can be by, you know, a few microseconds, right? You know, in the Olympics, you know, it could be a nose hair and you stand out. If you stand out, you show other people what's possible. Not everybody likes that. Some people get angry and think you're showing them up. Other people get inspired. I've always been inspired by somebody who's the best in the world at what they do. And so I think greatness is somebody who just will not settle and finds a way to do, be, share, and create in life what they want, as opposed to fitting in. I think most people are trying to not be rejected. I wrote in this book, I took a quote from Aristotle saying, how do you really live your life? Well, if you don't want to upset anybody, it's really simple. Don't do anything, don't say anything, don't be anything, and everybody will like you. You know? But if you want to have a quality life, I think you just have to put yourself on the line. And so to me, greatness is people that put themselves on the line, they keep growing, they won't settle. I don't tell people what to believe spiritually, but I believe that ultimately, whatever you believe, you got to live it, and it should lead to growing and giving. If you're growing, you feel alive. If you're giving, you feel 10 times more alive. And I think if someone can celebrate and give, then that's spiritual state. So to me, those are the areas I look at mastering. Business for sure, but it's the areas of life that matter most. And most of where we spend our time doesn't make people feel fulfilled. That's why the average person is not fit and healthy. The average person is not in a relationship where they have tremendous passion. I'm not a dummy, I'm not a positive thinker, I know the truth. The average person is not successful in business. The average person is not earning what they want to earn. But you know what? Very few people have those things, but a few do. A few are happy, fulfilled, spiritually alive, financially strong, their business is growing, they have passionate love affairs, and I'm obsessed with finding the few who do and find out what they do different and teaching to everybody. Learning it for myself and teaching everybody else. Emotion is it, and if we get the right emotion, we can get ourselves to do anything. We can get through it. If you're creative enough, playful enough, fun enough, can you get through to anybody, yes or no? Yeah. If you don't have the money, but you're creative and determined enough, you find the way. So this is the ultimate resource, but this is not the story that people tell us, right? The story people tell us is a bunch of different stories. They tell us we don't have the resources, but ultimately, if you take a look here, flip it up if you would, they say, what are all the reasons they have in common? We've said that. Next one, please. He's broken my pattern. But I appreciated the energy, I'll tell you that. What determines your resources? We've said decisions shape destiny, which is my focus here. If decisions shape destiny, what determines it is 3 decisions. What are you going to focus on? Right now, you have to decide what you're going to focus on. In this second, consciously or unconsciously, the minute you decide to focus on something, you got to give it a meaning. And whatever that meaning is produces emotion. Is this the end or the beginning? Is God punishing me or rewarding me, or is this the roll of the dice? And emotion then creates what we're going to do, or the action. So think about your own life, the decisions that have shaped your destiny. And that sounds really heavy, but in the last 5 or 10 years, 15 years, haven't there been some decisions you've made that if you made a different decision, your life would be completely different? How many can think of one, honestly? Better or worse? Say aye. So the bottom line is maybe it was where to go to work and you met the love of your life there. Maybe it was a career decision. I know the Google geniuses I saw here. I understand that their decision was to sell their technology at first. What if they made that decision versus to build their own culture? How would the world be different? How would their lives be different? Their impact. The history of our world is these decisions. When a woman stands up and says, no, I won't go to the back of the bus, she didn't just affect her life. That decision shaped our culture. Or someone standing in front of a tank. Or being in a position like Lance Armstrong and someone says to you, you got testicular cancer. That's pretty tough for any male, especially if you ride a bike. Right? You got it in your brain, you got it in your lungs. But what was his decision of what to focus on? Different than most people. What did it mean? It wasn't the end, it was the beginning. What am I gonna do? He goes off and wins 7 championships he never won once before the cancer because he got emotional fitness, psychological strength. That's the difference in human beings that I've seen of the 3 million I've been around. Because that's what my lab. I've had 3 million people from 80 different countries that I've had a chance to interact with over the last 29 years. And after a while, patterns become obvious. You see that South America and Africa maybe connect in a certain way, right? Other people say, oh, that sounds ridiculous. It's simple. So what shaped Lance? What shapes you? 2 invisible forces, very quickly. 1, state. We all have had times. Have you had a time you did something and after you did it, you thought to yourself, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. That was so stupid. Who's been there? Say aye. Have you ever done something after you do it, you go, that was me. Right? It wasn't your ability, it was your state. I show people how to change that quickly, but what I want to finish with quickly here is Your model of the world is what shapes you long term. Your model of the world is the filter. That's what's shaping us. That's what makes people make decisions. We want to influence somebody, we gotta know what already influences them. And it's made up of 3 parts, I believe. First, what's your target? What are you after? Which I believe, it's not your desires. You can get your desires to goals. How many of you got a goal, desire, and thought, is this all there is? How many been there? Say aye. So it's needs we have. I believe there are 6 human needs. Second, once you know what the target that's driving you is, and you uncover it for the truth, you don't form it, you uncover it. Then you find out what's your map. What's the belief systems that are telling you how to get those needs? Some people think the way to get those needs is destroy the world. Some people is to build something, create something, love someone. How could you not be inspired when you're seeing people eat again, when you're seeing people be free, when you're providing surgeries for, 100 kids last year that were blinded who can now see. So I get the juice from the big things and I get the juice from the individual things, but for me, it's about impact. If you can have impact and your life is meaningful, your life isn't going to be happy every moment. That's bullshit, but it can be meaningful every moment. And that's your job. It's our job to find a deeper meaning. And I think that meaning comes and the energy of life comes when you're not just trying to serve yourself. I think unfortunately for so many of us, social media and technology has started to shape us instead of us shaping it. It's using us. And the way it's using us is it's making us selfish. I mean, you see people like banging on their phone, like, give it a moment, it's going to a satellite, give it a second, you jerk, or you turn around and you see people like, they expect like everything to be given to them the moment they push a button, and humans don't work that way. I think today, I'd look for the best mentors, because today, because of the web, you can follow someone you don't even know. You can read what they write. You can read their blogs. You can interact in ways with them. Sometimes you can talk to them, they'll talk back on social media. So we have more choices today on that than ever. But I also try to don't have the belief that your mentor has to be perfect, because none of us are. There's no perfect human beings. And even if you are perfect, someone else will turn around and say you're not perfect from their perspective. For sure. So what you really want to do is just say, let me find 2 or 3 people that have answers, that have proven it by their life example, not because they can verbalize it. How people's lips move don't matter. How do their feet move for 10 or 20 years? And so I've always looked for people that were not only successful in the exterior world, but they're really happy and that they're contributing to society in a meaningful way, because those are the people that are most fulfilled. And so I think today you have to get clear, what do you want? And then go looking, and it's not hard to look again because of the world we live in today. There are things you obviously can't control, but there are plenty of things you can control. You can influence most things, but you can completely control your experience of life. And we forget that when every day you turn on the news or it follows you in your pocket and keeps telling you the worst scenario. I mean, people think that things are going to be good forever when it's going great. And that's total bullshit. Life is cyclical, right? There's always a new challenge or problem, and you become better if you face it. But also when things are going terrible, they think it's going to go terrible forever, and it's bullshit. We're in winter. It's going to be a longer winter than I want and you probably want. There are going to be people 5 years from now still wearing a mask in their mind, because it's kind of like the Depression generation. They're going to overreact, but there's also going to be so many new opportunities. So winter's followed by spring, baby. The darkest nights always followed by the day, and that's trite sounding, but it's effing true. So it's like we need to take control. So what gives me excitement is see people take back control of their life and not fall into the trap of being a robot or fitting into everybody else's plans. I constantly believe you got to feed your mind and challenge your body, because the mind-body works together. What stops people, as we said, is fear. Well, fear is physical. You feel it in your throat, your gut. But if you do something really physically strong on a regular basis, you develop a new emotional habit. And that emotional habit will get you to follow through and do things differently that people won't do. It's really not that complex. There are a few habits in your life that truly could change your whole life. I start every single day with this process called priming, training my brain to be in a peak state. Because we get primed all the time. People aren't aware of it, but there was a study that was done not long ago where they took some people, 100 actors, they walked up to 100 people in a park, and they rehearsed doing the same thing every time. They reach in their pocket to get their phone, and they hand the person a cup of coffee, and then they reach in their pocket looking down and say, would you hold this to me for a second, to a total stranger? And they grab their phone, look at it, type it, and they take it back. They go, thank you so much. The same for everybody. But then they come back 30 minutes later with somebody with, and the only difference, by the way, is 50% of them have iced coffee, 50% of them have hot coffee.
Got it.
Now, a person comes by 30 minutes later with a clipboard, gives them $20 and said, if you'll give me literally a minute and a half of your time to read this 3-paragraph story and answer these 2 questions, this is yours. 98% of people take the $20 and do it. They read the story. It's the same story for everybody. But half the people, when they ask them, the main character, how would you describe the qualities of the main character, their character traits? The ones that got iced coffee all say the person was cold and uncaring. 81% say that.
Come on.
The person that got hot coffee, 80%, a 1% difference say the person is warm and genuine. And the only difference is 30 minutes earlier, somebody primed them. See, you think it's your thoughts. Much of your thoughts have been primed by the environment, by the media, by what you read to, by your family, by your friends, by your culture, by your background. So what I do every day is I prime myself for what I want rather than letting the environment control me. So I live my life where I keep learning, I keep growing, I keep loving, I keep laughing, and I'm trying to leave a decent legacy of a meaningful life by constantly looking for ways I can be helpful. And my prayer, a simple prayer before I walk out on every stage is use me, Lord. And when you do that, it's like, if you get out of the way, my greatest gift is getting out of the way. I know that sounds silly to some people, but it's really true. I'm not an ultra religious person, but I'm extremely spiritual, and I believe the force of life comes through me, it comes through you, it comes through all of us, and the only thing that gets in the way is all the beliefs we have of how it's supposed to be, all the expectations we have, and I have them too, but I keep weeding them out.
What would you tell the startup entrepreneur who maybe is just getting started or maybe still has a full-time job and it feels like every dollar that they're making, they're just trying to build their business at the moment, they haven't cashed out yet? Should they be investing into their business? Should they still be saving some and put into the market? What would you tell that person?
I think you have to put something outside your business, because what's the number one rule of investing that even idiots understand? Don't pull all your eggs in one basket, right? And what do 90% of entrepreneurs do? Because of the illusion of control, they go, I'm going to put all my money in my business. Don't get me wrong. It's still a great place for your money and for your time and for your energy. But you got to take a piece of what you earn and you got to bet on some other entrepreneurs and get outside yourself specifically. And if you look at, somebody like Warren Buffett will tell you, look, he said, all my wealth is a result of a couple things, some good genes and compound interest and living in America. So if all you do is get compound interest on your side, the game changes. If you take a 19-year-old kid has got a little job and you say, look, I want you, it sounds like a lot, but I want you to put aside $300 a month. But let me show you why. $300 a month set aside, thrown in the market. Average market return's been 8%. It's been 10% over 100 years, but most recent, 30 years, 8%. So let's say you get the average return and it compounds. That kid who starts at 19 with $300 a month can stop at 27. He's only done it for 8 years, never put another dime in. And he's only put in $28,000, but that'll grow to 1.8 million without putting another dime in. That's the power of compounding. 28 grand, 1.8 million. If his best friend starts at 27 when he quits and invests every single year all the way to 65, and he puts in the same $300 a month, he puts in 140 grand, and at the end of that time, he's got $400,000 less money. So it's not the amount of money, it's the amount of time. Time is your greatest friend here. And if you get in the game, you're going to win. And you need to get in the game now, not wait till your business is successful. Breakdowns, it's certainly not something I experience, but it's not because I'm so talented or so brilliant or so fearless. It's just, you're like an athlete. You're an athlete. Yeah. You're in shape, right? You're not going to have a reaction in your body like somebody who doesn't take care of themselves. Right. So, I don't believe in emotional intelligence. I think it's useful, but I'm more interested in emotional fitness, because intelligence is a capability. Fitness is a state of readiness. Interesting. If you are fit, you can take that demand right now and you can deal with it. You can deal with that physical stress, that emotional stress. Same thing's true with psychological fitness, emotional fitness, right? So I'm pretty fit, and part of that is not because I'm so smart. Part of it is that I've taught this for decades. I remember I had a woman who came to one of my seminars in her, early 80s probably, and she would run in this room, 10,000 people. I think it was, she went a couple of 10,000 person events, and she would get in this front row and fight her way through there, and she'd jump and go for it. And at one break, she came up to me, I was signing a book for her, and she says, she goes, Mr. Robbins, I've seen you at like 8 of these. She goes, I've seen you like when you're really, I know, I can hear your voice, you're hurting or you haven't slept. And she goes, you always seem to be so up all the time. How come you're so up? And I said, well, part of it is I attend all these seminars. So I'm teaching it. So there's a fitness of that. But there's also, I've buried 3 fathers and 1 mother, and that affects your life. I've had a physician look me in the eye and say you have a tumor in your brain. Wow. And so I've had those moments that when you've had extreme stress and you push your way through it, you build psychological muscle. It's like it takes a lot to knock me off. In the early days, we didn't have $50,000 to keep the doors open. How do we do it? Then I had, graduated to $5 million. And I graduated to a partner that mine who kind of didn't do things well, and I ended up owning $100 million because I had to take on his debts. $100 million. But when you do all that stuff, now my companies do $5 billion, a year. So you keep expanding what I would call really the circle of the threshold of your influence.
Sure.
Everybody has a threshold of control, and if you get beyond it, you kind of freak out. So it takes a little bit more. I can't.
So you don't really have breakdowns.
I don't have a breakdown. I mean, do I get pissed off or get frustrated or tired? Yeah, but a breakdown, honestly, no.
Just to entrepreneurs in general, and you're an entrepreneur, wildly successful entrepreneur, and you work with and are friends with many of the top entrepreneurs in the world. What are a few of the common attributes of the super successful entrepreneurs that you've seen? That might not be the obvious ones that come to mind.
Well, gosh, I'll give you one example because I was just talking to him yesterday. Mark Benioff's a dear friend of mine, and he runs a company called Salesforce.com. He founded it. Mark went to my Unleash the Power Within event about 15 years ago. He went to it 3 times. It's repetition's the mother skill. He immersed himself in it. Again, a pro, not going to do something average. Comes up to me and introduced himself and says, Tony, he said, you've changed my life. I'm working for Oracle. I'm leaving. I'm starting this company, Salesforce.com. We're going to change the business world. I'll never forget. So we're going to do $100 million in business. I was teasing the other night. He's going to do $7 billion this year, right? And I've been on that 15-year journey with him. What do they have in common? They have a sense of something they want to serve greater than themselves. The only challenge sometimes in network marketing, and I think what gives it a bad reputation for some people, is you get people in there that really act like they're doing it for something larger than themselves, but it really is only them. Now, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to profit and be successful, but motive does matter. And the most successful entrepreneurs have a motive that includes themselves, but they want to do something that's going to change the world, make the world different. It's like, when you're trying to meet your own needs, you get a certain level of insight. If you're trying to meet the needs of your family, you get a different level of insight because life supports whatever supports more of life, more people. If you're trying to support your community, different insight. If you're trying to have an impact on the world, it's even larger. And I found in network marketing, you find a few missionaries that are like those other entrepreneurs that it really is their mission. They'd honestly do it for free. And they want to make money and they do make money. But if you're only doing it for the money, the unfortunate part is people sense that, and then they feel like it's just a transaction as opposed to an experience of added value. There's only one way on earth to really become wealthy, and that is do more for others than anybody else is doing. No matter how long you live, no matter what changes in society, skill number 1, it's the ability to recognize patterns. You're really good at it. You do it in finance, you do it in business. I'm not just blowing you with smoke. It's why you're successful. Because when you recognize patterns, it allows you to go to the second step, which is use them. If you recognize financial patterns, you can do great things. You recognize patterns in business, you can turn around any business. That's what I've been doing. I have 105 companies now. We do $7 billion in business. And I have no business background. But I recognize the patterns, and I studied the billionaires that started with nothing and said, what did they do? How did they do it? How did they turn it around? So if you can recognize patterns and if you can use them, you got a great advantage. But then gradually over time, if you're going to play the piano, you usually play other people's music initially. And then there's a point where you come through. Now you start creating patterns. And when you start creating patterns, that's when you become a dominant force in business, in life, in the marketplace, and with your children or anywhere else. Fundamentally, the most basic thing you got to do, especially at a time like COVID, is you got to every day have a couple of simple practices. One of those is every day you got to feed your mind. And when I say feed your mind, I mean consciously seek out something that's going to give you new insight, new inspiration, new way of looking at things. Because otherwise, today, the news follows you, right? It's in your pocket. And the news people are good people, but they're doing their job. What's their job? Make as much profit as possible. How do you get the most profit? Get the most people to watch. How do you get the most people to watch? Fear. If it bleeds, it leads is the phrase they use in journalism, right? And we've seen so much fear built up now that most people have lost their faith. And you can't lose it, fortunately. It's just a muscle that needs to be regained. But you have to fill your mind. You have to pursue it. Great ideas are not going to interrupt you. They have to be pursued. And the good news is today, if you get away from just the traditional news, you can go to podcasts like Boss Babes. You can go to different locations. You can get another perspective, and you can feed your mind. But if you don't feed your mind, my original teacher was a guy named Jim Rohn. And he used to say, Tony, I got a question for you. He said, what if your worst enemy puts sugar in your coffee? What's going to happen to you when you drink that coffee? Is it you're going to have sweet coffee? He said, what if your family member, your friend, your love, by accident drops 1 drop of strychnine? What's going to happen when you drink that coffie? He said, you're going to be dead. And he goes, that's right. Life is sugar and strychnine, so watch your coffee. Like every day, you got to stand guard at the door of your mind, especially at times like this when there's so much fear. So you feed your mind.
You mentioned you reach out to someone, you'll text someone, you'll send a voice note or a video message, or maybe you're calling them or just saying hi to them and telling them you're acknowledging something that they're doing well that you appreciate. I don't think that many people do this. Why is this so important for you personally? And why do you think this would help so many people get out of themselves and overcome anxiety and stress if they did this even a couple of times a week? I know you do this every day, but just a couple texts a week. Why was this so valuable for people?
Well, number one, I love people. So I love to if you just call someone to make a compliment and it's not sincere, anybody can feel that. I don't do that shit, you know? It's like I pride myself in finding the goodness in people or the skill sets in people. And I also know that what is acknowledged tends to grow. So from standpoint of that, I want them to feel that feeling of being appreciated. I want them to know I see what's happening behind the camera, so to speak. You know, it's like, that's what matters. It's not how everybody else sees you, it's how you really are. And then it also deepens every relationship you have when you sincerely acknowledge somebody and you notice something other people don't notice. And so it deepens the connection. And to me, quality of life is the quality of two things, your emotions and your relationships. And, you know, if my emotions are terrible, my relationships are going to be terrible. Right. But if I have great emotions and I can extend that out to help other people, then it just makes me feel more alive. So I do it for me and them. It's a virtuous cycle.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Tom Bilyeu, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
The times where you fatigue, they're not the times you're working the hardest. The times you fatigue are when you're being least yourself. You're not being true to who you are and what you want.